sure we do that right up front. So we're so glad you could join us today for High Plains. We're moving on in chapter 13 to a topic called The Two Emotions, chapter 13, section 5. David W. will be reading for us this evening. And David, we're appreciative of your service to the group whenever you're ready.
The two emotions. I have said you have but two emotions, love and fear. One is changeless, but continually exchanged, being offered by the eternal to the eternal. In this exchange, it is extended, for it increases as it is given. The other has many forms, for the content of individual illusions differs greatly. Yet they have one thing in common. They are all insane. They are made of sights that are not seen and sounds that are not heard. They make up a private world that cannot be shared, for they are meaningful only to their maker, and so they have no meaning at all. In this world, their maker moves alone, for only he perceives them.
Mm-hmm. So, A Course in Miracles will simplify our understanding of life. And so here's a simplification. There are really only two core emotions. Now, other shades and variations stem from love and stem from fear, but fundamentally, there are only those two. And so that greatly simplifies things instead of being overwhelmed with the idea of hundreds of different colors of emotion, that there's fundamentally two. And most people will understand those emotions, love and fear, according to your personal experience. But what we're talking about is bigger than your own personal experience. It includes everyone, as love is experienced throughout creation, and as fear is included through all the minds of those who have experienced fear. So it's not limited to your own experience. That may be a way to get started, but it doesn't end there. It includes all of us. And this experience with fear must be examined if we are to become free. There's no way around it. And it has attributes that you may not have learned elsewhere. One of them is that fears are centered around individual illusions. Think of this as your own illusions that belong to you and your narrative, the way you look at it. And that, when we assemble our own illusions together, they add up to something called a private world. This is necessary that you understand this. A private world is a way of thinking about your own life that is private to you. No one else knows what's going on inside you. And within your private world, you have your self-talk, your own illusions, your own definitions of what's important, including definitions of yourself, as well as your understanding of what love is. It belongs to you privately. And this is, we're later going to find out this is the ego's private world. Okay, so it, because it's private, it's cannot be shared. It's not that we as a group can all join in a private world together, for by definition, it's private. It's intended to keep you separate. And this private world overwhelms people's understanding to the point that they think that's what reality is. Said another way, they think their private world represents reality. The truth is, and we won't take the time here in our group tonight to prove this, but it would be fairly easy to prove to you that each of you has your own separate private world. No two of you have the exact same experiences, the exact same life story, the exact same self-talk, because your individual illusions have contributed to your private world. And so everybody has a different private world, but yet people believe that that's what reality is. And so, as it says here, only the believer perceives the private world. And so let me make one more statement that's not explicitly here on the page. Your private world becomes a prison cell for the ego to keep you in a narrow, frightened, dark, limited, fearful state of awareness. It's a cell block. We call it an ancient prison. And everyone has their own ancient prison. And freedom is a departing, knowing that you can depart and actually departing from that cell block. So the private world is important to recognize. And if you were to pay attention for the remainder of the week to thoughts that cross your mind and ask yourself, are these thoughts that we all share? Or are these thoughts that belong to my private world? You would immediately get a sense of the role that your private world has. Most people, it's unconscious until it's pointed out. And that's what we do here in A Course in Miracles. We take that which has been around for a long time in the unconscious domain, and we bring it up to the conscious awareness, and we look at it, and then we see it's composed on very scant, flimsy information. It's really a composite illusion. And once we recognize it as so, we can then discard it and become free. Okay, so having said that, there are only two emotions. Fear dominates a private, separate world, and love is shared amongst all minds. It's, as it says, love is changeless and continually exchanged, being offered by the eternal to the eternal. This is the way love extends itself. It increases as it is given. Love increases. There's a good one if you're taking notes. Love increases in your awareness as you give it away. It increases as it's given. Fear does not. Okay, we'll go on.
Each one peoples his world with figures from his individual past. And it is because of this that private worlds do differ. Yet the figures that he sees were never real, for they are made up only of his reactions to his brothers and do not include their reactions to him. Therefore, he does not see he made them and that they are not whole, for these figures have no witnesses, being perceived in one separate mind only.
Mhm. So this is often abstract. Let's make it very practical. Think for a moment of your mom. We would agree everybody here has a mom. If that wasn't your experience to ever know your mom, think of a mother figure. So what you just thought of, is that actually your mom? Or is that merely a memory that represents certain aspects of your mom? Clearly, it's just a memory. It's not actually your mother because it was a thought that you just had that stands in place of all the other feelings and thoughts you have about your mom. Well, what happens is we do the same thing in all our relationships. We represent them in our own mind. And then, whenever there's any need, we call up that representation in our mind and act as though that was the person, that our representation accurately reflects the real person. And so everybody does this. It's a part of being locked into the past in the ancient prison that asserts, as we read in the previous section, it's preoccupied with past thoughts and past memories and acts as if the past memories are still important, equally important and alive right now. And so our private world is populated with figures from our past in representations of individuals. And I can even tell you, I've had conversation with these representations before, right? I've heard, actually, when I was in a disagreement with somebody that was like an ongoing disagreement, in private, I would argue with them as if they were with me right then. Now, I wasn't really arguing with the person, I was arguing with my representation of the person. And this is what a private world is composed of, is just a bunch of figments of our mind that are then, because we give it the power of our mind, we make it to seem real to us. And what, in order for us to be at peace, we need to become free from delusions and nonsense and recognize reality for it was. These figures in our mind from our past were never real. In fact, no judgment of your brother is complete. It represents only the parts that you chose to remember and only your view of that person. It doesn't represent the person's entire life, it just little segments of it. And so, as a result, bottom line is each of us thinks about others in our own private way. For instance, I guess this is okay. Each of you thinks of me in your own private way. You have formulated for yourself your impressions, your likes and your dislikes. And no two of you have agreed exactly what those things are. Everybody holds it privately. Why do we say this? It's not to talk about me, for instance, but to recognize these are the mechanisms and strategies which the ego uses to keep us from the awareness of love's presence, to keep us preoccupied with the past and caught up in our own private drama. And if we are to experience the fullness of what love has to offer, that gift, we have to be able to distinguish between what is true and what is false, and then choose actively to embrace that which is true while we let go of that which is false. There are only two emotions, and the private world is definitely reinforcing the darkness. David?
It is through these strange and shadowy figures that the insane relate to their insane world, or they see only those who remind them of these images, and it is to them that they relate. Thus do they communicate with those who are not there, and it is they who answer them. And no one hears their answer save him who called upon them, and he alone believes they answered him. Projection makes perception, and you cannot see beyond it. Again and again have you attacked your brother, because you saw in him a shadow figure in your private world. And thus it is, you must attack yourself first, for what you attack is not in others. Its only reality is in your own mind. And by attacking others, you are literally attacking what is not there.
And so many of you have already untied this knot and realized these principles. So I'll just review it again quickly for those who may still be working to untie it. If someone in my past, if I have, let's say I have a very nasty judgment about them, that they are not to be trusted, that they're out to get me and hurt me, that's my view of them. Then that's what we call a strange, shadowy figure in my mind. That image exists in my mind. And then if I encounter the person, immediately that shadowy image that's in my mind is called forth, and I relate to the person that's there as if they were the shadowy image. For in other words, I take the image that's in my mind and I project that attribute, which are my judgments, onto them, and then relate to them through my interpretation of that person. So projection makes perception, and you cannot see beyond it. What we will do with the Holy Spirit is allow her to reinterpret our projections and project light and wholeness and truth and forgiveness onto others, and be able to see the light and truth and wholeness in others. Until then, these strange and shadowy figures that live in the subconscious mind, we will feel threatened by them and project that threat outward onto others. And here's the ultimate sense of taking responsibility. The threat is a threat that started in my own mind, and therefore the attack began in my mind. And thus we say you always attack yourself first, meaning it was thoughts in my own mind of which I'm afraid. And that's where the threat is coming from, miscreations of my own mind. If I'm to heal, I must free myself of my own attack thoughts. So is this clear? Is this this is not new to most people here. Questions, comments? Okay. Most of you are saying, let's get on to the love. David?
The delusional can be very destructive, for they do not recognize that they have condemned themselves. They do not wish to die, yet they will not let condemnation go. And so they separate into their private worlds, where everything is disordered, and where what is within appears to be without. Yet what is within they do not see, for the reality of their brothers they cannot recognize.
What is truly within, deep, we learned in the previous section that if you use a digging metaphor, you dig down deep enough and you find the hidden secrets of the ego, but that is not the foundation. You have to dig still deeper to get to the true solid foundation of your being. If you dig deep enough, you'll see the truth in your brothers, but you not be able to recognize that unless you're willing to explore to the depths. Let's go on to the next paragraph.
You have but two emotions, yet in your private world, you react to each of them as though it were the other. For love cannot abide in a world apart, where when it comes, it is not recognized. If you see your own hatred as your brother, you are not seeing him. Everyone draws nigh unto what he loves and recoils from what he fears. And you react with fear to love and draw away from it. Yet fear attracts you, and believing it is love, you call it to yourself. Your private world is filled with figures of fear you have invited into it, and all the love your brothers offer you, you do not see.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this is a profound turnaround and will cause many people to question how can this be? Because what it's just said is in our confusion, we have come to fear the love and love the fear. Well, that's completely upside down. Talk about craziness. Now, the question would be going beyond the words, is that really true? Is that really what we've been doing? How could this be true? Well, first of all, remember our private world is filled with shadowy figures, representations of others that represent our fears. So every time you access your private world, your private thoughts, you're accessing thoughts that are by definition separate from love. You're accessing the world of fear and darkness. We learned earlier in the chapter that the ego wants to make this manageable fear for you so that you won't, so that you will tolerate it. It's a fear that you can live with on a daily basis and continue to allow to be true. What happens in this program is you reach the point where you don't tolerate fear anymore. You're not willing to live in fear. And the other day, Kim made a declaration. I'm determined to heal this part of me. So you reach that point where you are determined to see. So then all that remains is for us to really come to believe that we have been inviting the fear in our life while we have been disinviting the love into our life. And We just a moment ago explained how every time you access your private world and you get all stirred up, all frightened about the future, or feel all guilty about your past, you're involved in the private world of fear. Well, of course, would say you chose to guide your mind into that dark cave, that you chose that. Um, so there you go. Now, the other question is, how is it that we are repelled by love? This one's maybe a little harder to see. Remember, every encounter is with another holy being. Every encounter is a holy encounter. And so the if we have an encounter with someone, but instead of recognizing the light and holiness and the miracle potential that's right there in that moment, if instead of that we project our fears onto the person, then what we're doing is miscreating with our mind. We're using our mind to spread fear where there could be love. And so there's just two examples of how we miscreate with the power of our mind. You see how simplifying it is to view the world as having just two emotions. We can begin to grasp more easily the fundamentals of what are going on without being all preoccupied with dozens of other terms and labels that talk about shades of fear or aspects of love, and just simplify it to those two. So again, the question is, when are we going to get to the love? David, when are we going to look to the love?
As you look with open eyes upon your world, it must occur to you that you have withdrawn into insanity. You see what is not there, and you hear what makes no sound. Your manifestations of emotions are the opposite of what the emotions are. You communicate with no one, and you are as isolated from reality as if you were alone in all the universe. In your madness, you overlook reality completely, and you see only your own split mind everywhere you look. God calls you, and you do not hear, for you are preoccupied with your own voice. And the vision of Christ is not in your sight, for you look upon yourself alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, for a lot of people, the healing begins after we hit rock bottom. This is a form of recognizing the bottom, of recognizing that as long as your mind remains split between love and fear, that we can unconsciously adopt these fearful habits of perception without even knowing we were doing so. And so here's what I think is the clearest description. God has not abandoned us. The Creator still has full confidence. He calls to us, but we don't hear. Why? Because we're too busy listening to the voice of our own private thoughts. We're preoccupied. Our attention is maxed out with the voice that we have miscreated and believe to be ourselves, this is our little self, and attending to it so much and believing in its guidance so much that it interferes with our hearing the voice of the divine. And so as a result, we become like the monkeys. What is it? See no evil. I can't see, I can't hear, and I can't speak. Kind of, we become impaired in our ability to follow truth because we've got another voice that we've been listening to. And so I say this is rock bottom because this is can serve as a turning point for which you realize that we've been fooling ourselves with this self-talk, this critical, judgmental, harsh interior voice that's suspicious and afraid, and we've been listening to it as a guide. And once you recognize the attributes of what it is, it's fairly easy to choose to find a better way. Susie?
Well, yeah, you just kind of said what I was going to say. This is amazing to me because this is exactly how I was. And I understand it so well now. And of course, I didn't understand it then because I was completely preoccupied. I didn't even know what it was. And it's took me a bit, but now it's crazy because it seems easy now. And what was so difficult, once I understood it, it's so easy now to recognize any of this that's going on. It doesn't even go on a lot, but when it does, I know what it is. And it's just so freeing. It's salvation, it's just so freeing to not have to be there anymore. So I just wanted to say that for anybody that might not think that can ever happen, it can.
Right. Thank you. I want to underscore that as I look at the faces and the names that are in the meeting right now, I've heard a half a dozen of you testify that this year the blinders, the veil, the curtain had opened, and that which was always there, but not understood and was confused, is now clear. My eyes are open. They have a saying, the blind have been made to see. And the deaf to hear. And so, yes, and it comes oftentimes unexpectedly. You plod away at your workbook lessons and reading the textbook and your prayers, and then all of a sudden the clouds just fade away and it's clear. Noel?
For me, this requires constant vigilance. Almost as soon as I think of a person, as in the example you gave of thinking of your mother, judgments come in, preconceptions come in. I recognize that's only a partial picture and not even a true one of the person. And yet it's made up of my experiences with the person, both good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's constant vigilance, constant.
It really is, Noel. And I would submit that it's very similar to if you try to sit quietly for 5 minutes without thinking. In that thoughts will definitely appear in your mind. And then the issue becomes, what will you do with those thoughts? How will you react to them? And the old tendency is to embrace them and explore them and and be preoccupied with them. The process that we're learning with forgiveness is to let them pass by. And that requires mind training. That, that only can really happen if we're willing to commit to letting ourselves learn this new way of reacting. Sandra?
I can so appreciate what you said, Noel, because with the vigilance, because my experience with this is that whether I'm creating from love or creating from fear, I am still tapping into the invisible, and it's still a choice. So the way that I make that choice is, how does it feel? Or does this work or doesn't it work? So not to judge either one, because the light has to encompass the fear. It has to make the fear, not make it, but it will, the fear will evaporate when I choose to align with love, with the truth of God, rather than the truth of the ego. They both look like creation, but one's a miscreation and it doesn't work, and the other one is true creation. That's why I think it can be so confusing, because they act similarly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complete.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. They certainly can be confused. We would say all humanity has confused them since the beginning of time. And the primary mission of the Holy Spirit is to help us distinguish the two, that which is true from that which is false. That we need that much help to make those distinctions, that we need the Holy Spirit to be with us at all times and guide us with that. Lee?
So I was thinking about actually the part where, and we've heard it over and over, when we're attacking our brother, we're attacking ourselves.
Yeah.
So this just kind of made sense for me here. Like, we're attacking, I had it, now I lost it. It's at the tip of my mind, but because when I'm attacking him, I'm really attacking myself, because it's not reality. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not in reality. So it's an attack on my own love and self, because I'm coming from a place that isn't real. So I'm withholding reality from myself, right?
Well said. You're withholding reality from yourself. Well, and it seems as though we're just pointing out the flaws of somebody else, but in so doing, we're obscuring reality from our own mind.
Right. And therefore robbing ourselves of love, really. And then the other part that I was thinking about a couple of paragraphs back, and maybe it's on the screen now too, your manifestations of emotions are the opposite of what they are. So I was thinking about romantic love, or, I guess any relationship of love that can appear as though it's love, but really it's fear. It's the ego. I guess it's the special relationship, which really isn't of love. It's of trying to fix myself from myself. I don't know. That made sense in my mind. It's not coming out of my mouth very well, but in other words, there's a difference in being present in the reality of love versus looking at a person and thinking that they're gonna do something for me. That's not, that might look like love, but it's really fear.
It really is. One way to really make that easy to understand, Lee, is to view it through the lens of lack. lacking love, if I feel like I'm lacking love, I got nothing. I got to go out and find someone that will give it to me. Then in fact, I have denied the reality of love in my own being. And no, nothing is going to be able to fill that hole until I recognize my own true self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. One more comment, Noel.
Building on what Lee was just saying, in paragraph 3, projection makes perception.
Yeah.
So as Lee was saying, if I think they're going to hurt me, that's my perception of them.
Mhm.
One of the geniuses of this section to me is that it does simplify everything into the two emotions. And as Sandra was saying, how does it feel? And that's a great touchstone. So coming back to how I'm viewing somebody maybe who just did something or texted me or something like that, and I'm immediately prone to, oh, why did she say that, blah, blah, blah. How does that feel? Nada. So, as I say, a genius of this section is right down to the two emotions, and we can judge rightly.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on because we promised to get to the love.
Little child, would you offer this to your father? For you, if you offer it to yourself, you are offering it to him, and he will not return it, for it is unworthy of you, because it is unworthy of him. Yet he would release you from it and set you free. His sane answer tells you what you have offered yourself is not true, but his offering to you has never changed. Yet you who know not what you do can learn what insanity is and look beyond it. It is given you to learn how to deny insanity and come forth from your private world in peace. You will see all that you denied in your brothers because you denied it in yourself. For you will love them, and by drawing nigh unto them, you will draw them to yourself, perceiving them as witnesses to the reality you share with God.
Mhm.
I am with them as I am with you, and we will draw them from their private worlds. For as we are united, so would we unite with them. The Father welcomes all of us in gladness, and gladness is what we should offer him. For every son of God is given you to whom God gave himself, and it is God whom you must offer them to recognize his gift to you.
That was a lot of words. It's really a beautiful message, but it's not necessarily that everyone will grasp it immediately. So that's why we take a little time to unpack it. Here's one expression that is perhaps not often used. It is given you to learn how to deny insanity and come forth from your private world in peace. This is to step out of the prison cell of the ego and come forth from there. Well, the part that's maybe difficult, what's it mean? It is given you. What is given you? By whom? what's being given. We would say it's your function that you not remain stuck in a private world of isolation. It is your function to become free, to come forth. But Julie C., we have to actively choose to do so. We will not be dragged out of our private world. It's something that requires persistence and willingness on our part. And so it's given as a part of your destiny that you would learn to install healthy boundaries, to deny insanity. And so when those thoughts arise, Noel, that feel dark and cold and fearful, we don't just entertain them for the next 20 minutes, but we realize, oh, I don't want to be engaging with that. We learn to deny insanity so that we might then choose again to come forth from our private world. Well, that in itself would be salvation, but there's more to that, and it has to do with relationships. It has to do with the impact that your choices have on your relationships with others, because our brothers are our mirrors of ourselves, and you will come to love them by drawing unto them and coming to recognize the light in them. You will draw them to yourself and perceive the reality of their being. This is part of our healing. Is we read it in the first paragraph that love is always being extended. True love, the love we're talking about here, must be extended. It's not kept private in your private world. And then there was one more point here. Oh, and as we do this, we will draw others from their private worlds. For as we are united, so would we unite with them. So, said another way, our function here is to heal ourselves and to help others to heal.
Come on.
By stepping forth from our private world and helping other people step forward from their private world. Love must be extended. Noel?
Could "it is given you" refer to our right mind?
Yes. There's a higher purpose given us, and yes, it resides and is appreciated and acceptable to our right mind. The lower mind has other plans, right? It says, I got my own agenda, wants to be independent, ego autonomy. Okay, so those are just a few of the highlights here. You might want to read this again on your own and see if you can find other highlights, things that speak to your soul. A lot of times it may create a tingle in your soul, what I call it, ring the bell of truth, but you can't quite verbally identify it, but you know there's something there. And so this is part of the learning process, is learning to appreciate when your soul has been touched. David?
Vision depends on light. You cannot see in darkness. Yet in darkness, in the private world of sleep, you see in dreams, although your eyes are closed. And it is here that what you see you made. But let the darkness go, and all you made you will no longer see, for sight of it depends upon denying vision. Yet from denying vision, it does not follow you cannot see. But this is what denial does, for by it you accept insanity, believing you can make a private world and rule your own perception. Yet for this, light must be excluded. Dreams disappear when light has come and you can see.
So they were talking about denial in this paragraph, and you remember there's two uses of denial, the proper use and the improper use of it. This is using denial as a weapon to deny vision. So it's this is why defenses are tricky. They can be, even when they can be used in two different ways, and we need to distinguish if we're engaging them in those. So let's make this feel personal, related to ourselves, because they're talking here about denying vision, and most of us would not acknowledge, oh, I've been denying spiritual vision. It's not a consciously aware that we're denying spiritual vision, but one form of what denial does is it shows up in the form that instead of a shared vision of creation, you believe you can make a private world and be the god of your own perception, be the ruler, the judge of your own world of perception, which is what a private world is. In that world, you get to be the king and decide what's permitted and what's not permitted into your private world. And so that is largely an unconscious choice to deny a spiritual vision. Did that make sense? By embracing a private world of private thoughts, peopled with your own images of others, you are accepting that into your mind and giving it power and attention. And you can't do that and at the same time participate in a shared vision of holiness. It's one or the other. There's only, yeah. So by addiction to a private world, addiction to a private world is a form of denying spiritual vision. We have all fallen into that trap at one point or another. It's not to make us feel guilty. It's to make us aware of the trap so that we can make a firm decision to see things differently. Susie?
You know what's really interesting to me about this now that I've done the lessons multiple times is, even though I'm in my private world, I'm not alone at the effects of my thinking. And I never realized, but I do now, that that's the case. And when I'm in a private world, I send off a certain kind of energy, which means I'm not alone at the effects of my thoughts. And so that has helped me understand so much when somebody might say, what's wrong? What are you doing? What's going on? Because I'm not alone at the effects of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that just really came up for me. It was like one of those aha moments. Yeah, my private world isn't always so private.
Mm-hmm.
It's recognizable that something is going on to others.
And not to have a private conversation with Susie, but more than a half a dozen times I've sent a text to Susie or David, and they sent it back. We were just now in the middle of talking about that.
So true.
Like, okay, I didn't know that. But it becomes part of a shared vision that goes beyond things that we're fully conscious of, but it's a phenomena that happens as a byproduct of shared mind, shared thought system. Okay, we'll go on.
Do not seek vision through your eyes, for you made your way of seeing that you might see in darkness, and in this you are deceived. Beyond this darkness, and yet still within you, is the vision of Christ, who looks on all in light. Your vision comes from fear, as his from love. And he sees for you as your witness to the real world. He is the Holy Spirit's manifestation, looking always on the real world and calling forth its witnesses and drawing them to you. He loves what he sees within you, and he would extend it. And he will not return unto the Father until he has extended your perception even unto him. And there perception is no more, for he has returned you to the Father with him.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So in Western culture, and what I'm sharing may be dated, may be more characteristics of the 80s, but just go with me here for a minute. It's the kind of the pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, make it happen, the Protestant work ethic, success, drive forward, the power of the individual to change themselves and change the world. I subscribed to all, I bought into that. I was raised in all that. Now we're being told for spiritual vision that you can't find it with your own way of seeing. That you cannot by yourself acquire spiritual vision. The technique of I'll do it on my own autonomously does not work. Vision is a gift that is shared. You can receive it as a gift only, not make it happen on your own. And that gift is received by your joining your mind with the mind of the Holy Spirit and uniting your will with the higher will. It's the opposite of trying to be out in front of the pack. It's actually letting Holy Spirit guide the process, and we now become followers. And so everybody has their own experience in how they're being raised, and my comments about Western culture are hardly true of everybody. But I think we all recognize that thread that was in Western culture. This requires that we be willing to follow guidance, not be out front, in front of it. And once we're willing to follow, then we become receptive. Let me go a little bit into a sidebar outside of A Course in Miracles and just say some people say that females are more receptive and males are more eager to be the leaders. And again, this is one way of viewing things. And some people feel as though females mentally are more willing to assume a follower position. This is not trying to degrade in any way anyone who may be like that or different. But when it comes to spirituality, it helps to be a follower. It helps to be willing to be guided and led by spirit. And if someone of the opposite orientation that always wants to be out in front, wants to be in control, and wants to lead, and wants to determine for themselves the way forward, when it comes to accepting spiritual vision, that is not a useful, that has to be put in the park. And so that because our vision is what got us in trouble. Our private vision, our autonomous, separate vision is what gets us in trouble. We need to learn to receive spiritual vision as a gift. And this spiritual vision is a gift that carries us all the way to the gates of heaven and on over through the gates of heaven into knowledge. Julius?
Yeah, I just love the promise that he's making to us here. And you just touched on it at the end with what you were saying about, taking us to the gates of heaven, because I love the part where it says he loves what he sees within you and would extend it. So that's love, wanting to extend. Love always wants to extend. He will not return unto the Father until he has extended, which means made loving, your perception, and that perception is no more. And the openness that I have to let that vision come in, that's the extent to which I'm going to see the light.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Thanks.
It really is. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. Okay. Well, have we found the love yet?
You have but two emotions, the one you made and one was given you. Each is a way of seeing, and different worlds arise from their different sights. See through the vision that is given you, for through Christ's vision, he beholds himself. And seeing what he is, he knows his Father. Beyond your darkest dreams, he sees God's guiltless Son within you, shining in perfect radiance that is undimmed by your dreams. And this you will see as you look with him, for his vision is his gift of love to you, given him of the Father for you.
Well, I would like to comment on that or just amplify that. So we know that Christ's vision is a gift to each of us. And that vision, so to speak, it's given to you. We would say it's a part of your being, your spiritual being. The promise is that you would make conscious contact with that inner vision. It's a vision of holiness, and that you would be able to recognize yourself in it, in the midst of it. that, as it says here, for through Christ's vision, he beholds himself in you. And so let me back up for a minute and just elaborate a little bit more. The ego part of our mind wants to stay away from that experience and that encounter. The ego part of our mind does not want us to come into direct contact with our own inner holiness. It wants to create an obstacle and go in the other direction. And what is the primary tool the ego uses to keep you from making contact with your own holiness? Guilt. It will teach you I'm not worthy. Don't you know I'm flawed? Don't you know I have problems? It's just little me here struggling in the world. It will use guilt to cast a shadow in your mind so that as you approach this inner light, you will feel the shadow of your own guilt and will feel unworthy of entering any further into the light. Therefore, the work that we must do is to cast away this mythology about guilt. We can't, said another way, we can't carry our guilt into the presence of this intense, loving light that is pure and unadulterated. Your guilt will only repel you from the light. And so to heal, we must undo the role of guilt. What is the title of this chapter? The Guiltless World. So we're being prepared here. So let's just review quickly. There is a vision. It's a way, it's an insight, an inward spiritual sight of clarity and understanding of the truth and of light that is within us already. It's a vision. Our conscious minds, we would say there's a gap. Our conscious minds aren't there yet. And the ego wants to maintain the gap by teaching about guilt, that we're unworthy and that we're not, et cetera, about guilt. And so we need to free ourselves from all guilty self-talk and all notions of guilt. We need to forgive the world of all its guilt in order that we might enter into that light and feel as though we belong there. And when we feel as though we belong there, the arms are already open to receive us, but you must feel towards yourself that you're worthy to be received in that light. Doesn't it say God's guiltless Son within you? That's what will enter more fully into the vision, is our guiltless state of mind. David, you had your hand up.
Yeah, because the import of this, Jonica, is, and Heather and I were discussing this earlier, as far as the chicken and the egg, which comes first. It makes it very clear that we're supposed to use our Christ vision to remember our holiness and our innocence. And that's the first step before we can extend that love to others. We were trying to figure out, because we know we reinforce it when we extend it, but it really comes from us using our Christ vision, for me anyway, first, so that I can feel the innocence and feel the holiness. And that's what I'm going to extend to my brother, and that's what we're going to connect with. But I can't make that extension without reinforcing and using the Christ vision to do that. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Okay, so we promised we would get to the love. Let's finish on that note.
The Holy Spirit is the light in which Christ stands revealed, and all who would behold him can see him, for they have asked for light. Nor will they see him alone, for he is no more alone than they are. Because they saw the Son, they have risen in him to the Father. And all this will they understand, because they looked within and saw the darkness, the Christ in them, and recognized him. In the sanity of his vision, they looked upon themselves with love, seeing themselves as the Holy Spirit sees them. And with this vision of the truth in them came all the beauty of the world to shine upon them.
Mhm. I need to just clarify this line here. They will understand. It is given you to understand. It's not to say that right in this very moment, understanding has come. It is given that we will understand. Why? Because we looked within and saw beyond the darkness. Beyond the darkness, we saw the Christ in others and recognized him. It's a vision, it's an experience of connecting both with the recognition that it's within you as well as without you. Another way is to say it has to be extended. It's not a part of a private world paradigm. It's a part of a shared reality, the light within you, the light in others as well. And so his vision, they looked upon themselves with love, and then having seen it in themselves, they see it in others. There are, and from that point, miracles are natural. They happen without any conscious effort to do so. So, Noel, vigilance is needed in the training period. And all of us are in that training period. There is a state where they talk about here, which is not a beginner state. It's recognizing the Christ in yourself and in others. That is the fruits of your vigilance, the fruits of your mind training then are manifest. And so it becomes it's a different phase of the learning journey. It's a phase where miracles happen naturally and on a regular basis because a new perceptual system has taken root and become habitual in the mind. And those habitual ways of reacting supersede the need for vigilance. And so that's why we train now. By the way, this is another way of saying the best golfers in the world still go out and practice every day, right? So that they keep at it. They're persistent. 365 lessons, right? So persistence, regularity, until sufficient quantitative practice lead to a qualitative change, a qualitative shift that from what would seem like hard work, until it becomes natural and habitual and regular. Well, that's as far as we're going to read tonight. David, hopefully didn't skip any paragraphs here. The other day I left the last paragraph off. um, so only two emotions. It's much simpler now. We realize our private world is filled with the emotions of dark figures and judgments which we've made in the past about ourselves and about others, and that we are being invited to step forth from our private world where we can become free, entertain, and welcome a new perceptual system, and in so doing, invite others to step forward from their private world into a new vision, a vision that transforms the individual as well as the whole world. So thank you, my friends. It's a wonderful journey. We will pick this up again next Saturday. And just wanted to thank you, David, for reading and say, I'm thrilled to be on this journey with each of you. This is a very powerful medicine that we're working with here. And the Holy Spirit has a plan and a curriculum that includes all of us. And I am testifying to, I see it operating in your lives.
The phrase namaste in light of this section takes on new meaning for me.
How's that?
See the Christ in you.
Oh, yes, very
That's the
good.
lesson.
That's beautiful, Noel. Thank you for transitioning that. Yes. Namaste, my friends.
I behold the Christ in you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, dear.
Good night, everybody. Thanks, David.
Good night, all.